right.
Hey, Donnie, what's going on with the town land? Everything pretty much done for what they can do now?
Yeah, that's the fall phase is done. Chris put in a bunch of rocks around the perimeter because people were already driving in there, getting stuck, driving in the swales, driving off the parking lot in the swales, getting stuck, driving way. He said somebody drove way down to the beachhead, got stuck, but managed to get themselves out. So that's it. They won't be driving in there anymore because we got boulders now all around the parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay, it is 7. For the record, we have in the town hall, Joe Mayato, Bill Ryan, Michael Focarelli, and Donald Maderas. In attendance by Zoom, we have Jim Farrell, who unfortunately has no video or microphone. Hopefully he can hear us. And we also have Larry Anderson in attendance, whom I can see and eventually will hear because he's muted. I do not see Patrick Canane at the moment. He couldn't come. Okay, so there you go, sir. It's your
So the
meeting.
meeting is open at 7:01 after Carol's speech. I'd like to have a moment of silence for the young girl that died in that fire today and pray for her young sister. It's in Fall River. I mean, Providence.
Providence.
I thank you for doing that, and Joe, would you do me a favor? Is everybody minutes?
No.
I will give you time. Okay, then we're gonna,
All right, why don't we suspend the meeting and pass it out for the next meeting?
so we will do, what was the date on that meeting? I'm sorry. December 8th, we will discuss that in January because the minutes aren't ready. So now, Joe, would you do me a favor when you're done writing and read the agenda, please?
All right, the first item on this, this is a special meeting. And the first item on the agenda is a review of the CRMC maintenance permit. By the way, Donnie, you're pretty much on deck for this whole meeting.
Larry, can you confirm that you can hear sufficiently? You're muted. Can you?
I can hear you. I can hear okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I'm going to mute myself until you need me.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
So there you go, Donnie.
All right. Did everyone,
Speak directly into that.
did
please.
everyone get, Don Maderas, did everyone get a copy of the permit? Carol emailed it to everybody.
I didn't print it out, though.
Did anybody read it? Does anybody have any comments or thoughts?
You got it?
My question was, Donnie, is this everything you were looking for in the agreement?
Mike, can you make sure you're in the microphone for the people in attendance?
Mike Focarelli. Donnie, is this everything that you were looking for in the agreement?
Well, basically, so we put the stormwater plan together. I emailed the plan out to everybody. I assume you guys saw it.
Yes.
So it allows for elevating the beach at the entrance. It allows for putting in a loose concrete block wall along the north side of the parking lot from the entrance for a distance of about 280 feet, which basically helps us with the elevation. It's a retaining wall, so we can elevate the beach without the slope spilling out into the buffer zone of Tunipers.
Excuse me, Donnie, when you say a loose concrete block wall, do you mean like a modular block wall?
Just what I had spec'd out was just a large 2x2 by 8 foot long concrete blocks that the casting yards pour with the junk
yeah,
concrete.
waste blocks.
Yeah. That's what I had spec'd on the plan. So that the permit included
One
that,
layer?
basically enough to get the elevation 8 for the parking lot. The thing is, when I had a local contractor take a look at it to just come up with a ballpark estimate as to what the cost of that work would be. He came up with a very good suggestion, which was, he pointed out that, and this was right after that nasty southeaster, what's going to hold these blocks from moving laterally with the waves and whatnot. So what he suggested was digging it out and putting in a footing and like a 4-foot wall, and putting it in the ground so that the top of the wall is still the same elevation proposed for the top of the blocks, but at least the structure would be keyed into the ground. He even suggested driving re-rod through the footing down into the ground just to help key the whole thing together. I thought that was an excellent idea, and that is basically item 2 on the agenda, which is going to be to discuss submitting a design substitution to CRMC to basically do that, substitute a poured footing, low wall, substitute that for the approved loose concrete block wall. So we'll get to that in a minute, but that's what covers the permit. The permit it's the 10-year renewal, so it covers the annual parking lot work, but it includes this one-time wall installation, elevating the parking lot, and doing a pavement overlay, saw cutting in South Shore Road, and after bringing the grade up to the proper grade, putting pavement in over basically over the footprint of the existing pavement at the entrance to the beach. The last thing it includes is cutting a swale right along Round Meadows. As soon as you come into the beach on the right, where we put one when we had to do something for stormwater. Well, this is kind of like, it's in the same spot. It's the same idea. It's just designed on paper and
Just hog out a swale on the south side of the road.
and the gutter from the entrance from where the gate is on the right-hand side of the road as you're driving into the beach, which would be the south side. From the gate down to the beach entrance, we're basically just going to scratch that gutter out a little bit because it's above the road. It's filled in. There's probably in places only 5 feet between the face of the wall, which marks the right-of-way line to the edge of pavement. So it's not like we can, dig a 2-foot gutter or anything, but just something lower than the road, just to help get that water off the road rather than have it run down the pavement and then in. So all of the, riprap and check dams and whatnot, all those things, and they're all shown on the plan. They all make for a pretty good resolution, I think, of the flooding we've been seeing at the entrance to the beach, and certainly it met with CRMC's approval because they
It sounds like
issued
something
the
that they would
permit.
be amenable to by doing it that way, right?
Well, they issued the permit, so they are amenable to
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So we designed it to the maximum extent practicable in accordance with the Rhode Island stormwater regulations, soil erosion sediment control manual, all that good stuff. So there's it's a good design. It's well-based and was obviously well-received because they issued the permit. So a couple things on the permit, though. If you haven't read it, there's several sections in there under additional stipulations regarding requests for permanent buffer zone markers. That's the only thing in there, the stipulations related to the buffer zone along the creek, which they call the breachway in the permit. But basically, that's item 3 on the agenda tonight, so maybe we can just keep moving along rather than take things out of turn. So last thing on the maintenance permit, unlike prior ones, there's no requirement for it to be recorded with the land evidence records. That's unusual, I guess, in my experience. I don't think that it means we can't record it if the commission thinks they should, but we're certainly not. Most of these permits and ones from DEM as well have the requirement that they be recorded within so many days. All our prior permits had that. This one clearly doesn't, so I don't know.
Is there any reason for us not to record it, Donnie?
No, I mean, I don't think there's any harm, so
Make it official, would that be that make sense?
Well, it is official. It doesn't need to be recorded because there's no requirement saying it does. So that there's no need to record it. And I would say since we might be asking for modifications, I don't think we should record it at this time. And again, there's no deadline or requirement, so I don't
All
think
right, so
there's any issue.
up until the point that we have it finalized, maybe, that once it's finalized with the modifications that we want, then maybe we record it at that point?
Yeah, because I don't think it's, I don't think there's a downside either way. Why not record it when we're happy with it?
Are we required to submit the modifications?
Yes.
Well, first of all, tonight, if this commission decides that they think a modification is a good idea, we should vote on that, and then it would be incumbent upon us to submit it, yeah.
Would that supersede, so we've gotten this permit?
Yes.
Yes,
That's,
They would have to agree to the modification. right?
okay,
that's correct, and there's,
but that doesn't affect the permit that we've been issued?
no, I think if they say no to the modifications, we've still got the permit to do what was
Okay.
originally proposed.
Okay.
There's
that's my question.
there's a section in here that speaks to that. That speaks to, if you do want to, more or less says if you do want to make modifications, you've got to, if you want to change the plan, you've got to basically submit any changes for approval.
And we have to submit an application to open the creek?
Yeah, that's one of the things they said in there is that we have to file a separate permit for breaching the creek with all the required. At this time, no assent for breaching a tunipus is authorized. The Beach Commission shall submit a separate and complete assent for annual breaching of the pond. So we'll do that. And that's,
So this does not, the permit now does not include permission to breach every year.
that's correct.
And did it before?
No.
The previous version?
No, what they did before is they would do it on a last minute basis because we would be advised last minute DEM was coming to do Goose Wing, Second Creek. DEM would call us and say, hey, while we're there, do you want us to breach tunipers for the town? And we would say yes, and they would say, okay, fine, just get the permit from CRMC and we'll do it. So then we'd call CRMC and say, hey, can you give us a permit in 3 days because time is of the essence. So after several go-arounds, several cycles of doing that, CRMC said, why don't we just include Tuniper's breach permit in the next annual 10-year maintenance permit, which we did. However, there are issues associated with that, so they bumped that out and they want to see it as separate. So that would be a next step, would be to submit a permit for that.
So we're going to keep that separate for now from this agreement.
It is separate.
Okay.
It's not
So
part
why
of
don't we, does anybody have any discussion about this permit?
Well, I think that
Thank you, Don.
we should, the permit, we should vote to accept it, I think.
Yes.
And then maybe as a separate motion, say that we want the modification that between you and the contractor that you're suggesting, make a separate motion that we could submit that to them, their, review.
Correct, and I think so, but before we take any votes, maybe we should look at, so we talked about item 2, which is discussing the possible design substitution, so to submit basically, respond to CRMC and ask them if they would allow a design substitution under this permit.
But right now, we can vote on this permit, and then,
Okay.
as they say in that letter, that we can do that later if they say yes or no. Is that correct?
That's, yeah, somewhere in there it says
Yes.
that if you want to make changes, you've got to submit it. You've got to
That's
submit
correct.
the changes to them.
So what I'm saying is, we make a vote on the permit as is. And then if there's any changes, we take a vote on that we can submit those.
Well,
No.
I agree with your intent, but I don't think the wording's, in my mind, I mean, I think we should accept the permit with the with the knowledge that that there are items in there we want changed, and we're gonna submit the request to have them changed.
Okay, so we can do that in one step then, you're saying?
I think so.
All right.
So
Before we
we're
do
gonna-
that, I just wanted to mention about, in this permit, it's talking about that buffer zone.
Mhm.
And it's requiring specific things, so we all understand that, and we're gonna be in agreement with that. That's
Yeah.
gonna be an undisturbed area.
Yeah, I,
4x4 posts in and so
and I
forth.
disagree. That's one of the items that I think we should reach out to CRMC and ask them to reconsider, because so if we're ready to move to 3 and discuss the buffer zone, I think that, that buffer zone along that creek has been used by the town for years. They're asking us to stay out of it to allow it to revegetate.
Right, that's why I brought it up. It's a
In
significant
my,
difference.
years going to that beach, I've never seen any vegetation along the creek at the beachhead. I'm not talking about at the back end of the parking lot. I'm talking about out at the beachhead.
Right, near the creek, near First Creek.
So when they say they want us to let it revegetate, I think what they're really saying is they want us to let it vegetate. We use that area as a staging area for police, for patrolling Goose Wing. We use it for handicap parking. We use it for surf camps, community outreach for nonprofit, goodwill community events, the hunger thing, emergency access for Goose Wing. I think we need to tell CRMC, we need to open a discussion with them to say, I think near the beach, along the creek, near the beachhead, warrants a little closer look and perhaps some modification.
So if we take that out of that agreement as a separate item, we can still vote on the agreement on the permit, right?
Yeah,
As that is the question, so we can do that in 2 stages, that we agree with the permit, but this is a subject that has to be discussed.
yeah, right, so we accept the permit, however, we are,
Yeah.
we accept the permit with concerns and requests,
Yes,
and
yes.
requests for changes,
That's correct.
right? Okay, that sounds.
I mean, I think,
With the understanding that we're gonna.
Be requesting
request some
changes.
right,
Yep, that sounds good.
But at least we have something in place.
Correct.
That's correct.
As opposed to not having any.
That's correct.
because we want to vote on this to get it through, and what we're saying is, subject of this change on this side, but we agree with this permit. That's what I'd like to vote on
Yep.
tonight, is to say, we agree with the permit, but we have questions on that section, which I totally agree with. We could do that in 2 items. Carol, is that?
But does that mean that we agree?
Yeah, I don't want to use the word agree.
Well, that's why
I
I'm going to
think-
ask Carol.
Yeah.
I think, before Carol weighs in, I think accept the permit with the
With
understanding that
reservations.
we're
Yes, that's what I'm
requesting,
saying.
we're going to be
Right, that's what I'm
requesting
saying.
modifications. We say agree with it, that kind of
Well,
doesn't
I'm saying we agree
satisfy
with the
that.
permit, but this is a separate stage.
I just suggest that you acknowledge the issuance of the permit to
Okay.
you,
Okay,
That's better.
That's what we
spelling
want
out
to
the name of the permit,
Yeah,
but then say, but we would like to, and then
Yeah.
spell out what it is
Okay.
you would like to see.
yeah.
Acknowledging that it's been given to you, but also
Acknowledging
asking
that
for what you would
we're
like
gonna
to
have-
amend.
We're going to suggest something to them later
You ask-
about this
well,
section.
I think you're planning on doing it right away,
Yeah,
aren't you?
right away.
Yeah.
So we have requested
Okay.
amendments.
I like that. I
So,
like that. Sorry.
I guess, I'll make a motion that, we, acknowledge receipt of the CRMC maintenance certification M 2019-12-069. It's on the top of the thing. What?
I was gonna say, it was emailed to the beach commission, so you should have it.
That was very good.
Was Cindy
Very
copied on
good.
that? Yeah.
All right.
So you have that. You can get the details on that. So that we acknowledge receipt of it with the understanding that we're going to go back and
Yes.
request certain modifications.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, because this thing that I talked about, with the buffer zone, that's pretty stringent and specific as to what has to be done there.
Right.
And I don't know that we want to do that.
Well, for one thing, they want permanent markers. I think that's a safety hazard there, for one
24
thing,
inches above grade, 4x4 pressure-treated timber posts.
right?
But that's a later discussion.
Correct.
Yeah, so as part of that discussion, though, it says the intent of these markers is to provide permanent reference points on site which are clear to present and future property owners. Why is it saying that?
I don't know. I thought that was curious. That might be just boilerplate. That's
I think
probably boilerplate
That would be
language.
my guess.
Is there something,
Because
is
if
there something that
you,
they know, like with this whole thing about the recording of that, land evidence records and with, CRMC supposedly owning that section? and all that?
CRMC doesn't own
Not
anything
CRMC,
there.
TNC.
TNC.
Well,
And is there something that's planned that we don't know about, like TNC wanting to sell that section or something?
well, we don't know what we don't know about, so I don't know. I don't think
Seems
so.
weird that they were.
That's probably boilerplate, Joe, because you as a
Okay.
landowner, if you're in CRMC jurisdiction and you request a permit, they're gonna make you put out buffer zone markers on your property. So therefore, if you sell the property in the future, a future owner would see those markers. I think that's just boilerplate
Yeah,
language.
and it really doesn't make sense because it says no alterations of the buffer zone are allowed, including grading, mowing, pruning,
Correct.
thinning, mulching, landscaping, or any other activity. So
Correct.
if you don't do that, there's not gonna be anything there.
That-
Nothing that's
If you
gonna
don't do
really
anything in
grow.
the buffer zone, it's gonna vegetate, and then
Eventually.
very quickly, once it vegetates, then it's even, oh, now you can't ever touch it. Then it's
Yeah.
like, holy water, hands off. But I mean, that area gets dredge spoils when we dredge the creek.
That's right,
It's like, one of the Nature Conservancy people said recently, that area has no functions and values the way a normal creek would, because it is used, it's all gravel, there's no vegetation.
Right, it's a breachway.
It's just, right, so it's just a little, it's a little overreaching, I think, but I think if we put a letter to CRMC and explain all the different
Yeah.
uses which we use that area for, and propose a modification to that section of the buffer zone from the back corner of the parking lot up to the beachhead. I mean, that's all we can do, is put together a well-reasoned, argument and ask them to consider that.
Now, while we're on that subject, why don't we finish this one? I made
Yes.
the motion.
Would you make your motion a little clearer in the sense that you're acknowledging, but don't just say that you want to amend something in the future, because that's not clear enough to allow him to submit something now.
All right,
That's
we need
true, that's
To be
true.
more specific about what areas that we are intending to modify.
Right.
Okay, so we're acknowledging receipt of the blah, 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 thing that you got the title now. And, with the understanding that we are intending, to submit modifications related to the, design substitution for the block wall and the issues related to the buffer zone.
Is that specific enough on the buffer zone, Carol?
If that's all that you need for authorization, then yes.
Somebody want to say?
Do I have a second?
Michael Fogarelli, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Joe Mayado, aye.
Bill Ryan, aye.
Michael Fogarelli, aye.
Don Maderas, aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
So, I'd like to say something now that, okay, out of this permit, that second half of Second Creek, that we need a design on to even submit to them, and then we vote on that if it's a yes or a no. Am I correct?
What do you need second?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, you threw me off when you
All
mentioned
right.
Second Creek.
So, right now, we just agreed on the permit,
Yep.
and now the subject can change at the end of the beach.
Yeah.
That is, I consider that in the permit, but not voted on yet.
not agreed to by us.
not agreed to, I should say.
But now the receipt of it.
Now we have to submit something that if we want to change it,
Ah.
then we give it to them, and that comes back, and then we deal with it at that point.
So you're saying it's a separate vote to authorize us to request this change?
Yes.
Got it.
But isn't that what you just did? That's what I tried to get you to do in that first one.
Well, I'm trying to separate the two, Carol, maybe I
Yeah,
did
but
it
no,
wrong.
they're all in one, and you've just done it. You
Okay,
voted
all
to
right,
acknowledge
sorry.
that
I
permit
apologize.
and to authorize him to submit
Okay,
a proposed amendment. You did that all in
Because-
one vote.
okay.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to make sure it
Yeah.
was separate, but it was in one vote.
Well, it's one vote, but
Okay.
the intent is clear that you acknowledge receipt of the permit that they gave you
Yeah,
and propose to submit an amendment
okay.
for the things that he
Changes
noted.
That we referred to.
It made me nervous because I wanted it.
Well, while we're on that subject of that area, Donnie, correct me if it's out of turn here, but when you and I met with Tony,
Mhm.
and did you end up putting that package together, and whatever happened with the lawyer and all that stuff?
Yeah, so, and I think that's item 5, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, well, it's kind of somewhat, it's related to item 5, but that's all right. Yeah, so what we did was I didn't dig into that and put it together right away, so I contacted Tony and I asked him if he would hold off on contacting the solicitor until I had enough time to put that information together, because we all recognize that if we can hand the solicitor documentation, it would limit his review time, which would limit his, charges to the town. Tony thought that was a good idea.
Okay.
So that hasn't been done yet. But since that came about, we got, why don't we take item 5 out of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we do that?
You do have Mr. Anderson waiting for you to do his part.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. So let's hold off on that then. And it's because Larry's on for item 4, so we won't keep him up all night here. So are we ready to go to item 4 on the agenda?
Yes,
All right. So, as you know, the town is in the process of applying for the Municipal Resiliency Grant from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. The town was one of 4 towns, I believe, according to the newspaper, that were approved for this go-around of grants, if the Secana Times was accurate, my memory's accurate. So the grant requires projects to be shovel-ready. So the grant is not, the money for the grant is not for designing, so to speak. It's more for the actual construction. So they're calling it shovel-ready. So basically what we have with this permit in hand, we have a shovel-ready project. When I say the town, I'm talking the committee, the grant committee members, who was Larry Anderson, Bob Mushin, and Tony Texera. And I've been participating in their weekly meetings as a representative of the commission, and also just as a general engineer, because they have another project or two that sometimes my input might be helpful. So basically, where they're at is they would like to submit the beach project
okay.
for the grant. And I think it's a great idea. I do have a concern about that, and that is that my concern is that the awarding of the grant there might be a tendency or an enticement for the people issuing the grant to want to put stipulations on it that might be stipulations that the commission and our operating of the beach might not be such a good thing. So to move that forward, in my mind, I'm thinking it would be better. If you're looking at 2 options, I think it would be better for the grant people to say, we received your application. We understand that there are certain things you don't want changed, for example, and we're not willing to do that, so we're not going to award you the grant. The other option would be they award the grant with stipulations, and then if we decide we can't live with the stipulations, we refuse to take the money. That second option, to me, doesn't sound like a very good, it sounds like a good one to avoid if we can. So Larry and Bob and Tony and myself talked about this yesterday morning at the weekly meeting, and I raised this issue, and they understand it. And what Larry is, and he can jump in when he wants to. Larry is basically his function is helping write the grant application. So what he's going to try to do is put language in the grant application to basically say how we're using the beach and how we're running the beach and things that we'd like to continue to be able to do, so to speak. That might not be a good way to describe it, but so there's a good for example. So the good example in my mind is, you know, the state's not going to award a grant that lets the town restrict the use to anyone other than non-residents, right? So if we can bring it to their attention, the beach is open to all when it's open. The parking lot and when the beach is patrolled 8 to 5 is open to everybody. But at night with COVID last year, we only had it open to town residents at night. Yeah, I know this is premature, but there is a possibility, because this commission discussed it, that we may in the future think that even after COVID's over, that having the beach at night only open to town residents might be a desirable thing for all the obvious benefits we saw this year by doing that, in terms of not
Maintaining the security patrol.
maintain the security, but then we don't have the major trash cleanup every morning. We don't have the lawless evenings down there. We don't have.
During the season.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't close the beach. We only close the parking lot, right? So the beach is open to whoever wants to walk on. Always has been, always will be. It's really about the parking lot. So what we were talking about with Larry, Bob, and Tony was including language to say that we, if this commission feels it's a good idea, we might want to consider residents only at night. And as not a COVID situation, but as a permanent situation.
Bill Ryan has supported that from way at the beginning. I tried to push that through, and it was shut down, but I think that's a great idea.
I mean, we just see, you talk to the beach manager and just, he said it was like night and day.
Yeah,
From
I
past
think the
years to this
experience
year.
of this COVID summer has proven that that's a really successful.
Yes.
And I think that town residents, everybody that I talked to, thought that was a great experience, and I think that we should strongly consider keeping that practice.
I think depending on what happens, you know, with COVID over the winter and all that, before we open up in the spring, we should probably specifically address that and state that, I mean, the way it looks right now, I think we all feel that way. Who knows, you know, COVID and whatever, maybe there'll be no beach, you know, but hopefully not the case, especially now with the vaccine and all that stuff.
Okay.
But I think before, you know, one of the meetings before we open the beach, we actually bring it up, make a vote and say,
Yep.
you know,
It does need to be listed on the agenda.
Yes,
We
yeah.
really shouldn't be having
Yeah.
this conversation right now.
Right,
So
okay, all right. Let's get on with
what
that.
I would,
Sorry.
what I would propose is that we put this on the January 12th agenda, discussion about that very thing, if we're going to, rather than wait till before the beach opens. The reason for that is the grant is due the 14th or the 15th. So we've got one more meeting
Okay.
that we can have. So it would be better to send it in with the grant that's the way we're going to do it.
But you,
If
they
we
know what's
decide to
going
do
on.
it that way, so
sure.
that they know, because we, like I said, I would rather figure out if there's a way we can explain how we run the beach and how we'd like to continue running the beach as part of the grant, so they understand when they're considering it. And, you know, I guess similar to the CRMC permit, if there's anything in the grant that, any stipulations that we feel are difficult, we might have to just reach back out to the grant people and ask them for a modification, if that's the proper.
So.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
And I'd like to ask it of Larry, actually. Larry, is this a legitimate concern? Because I thought the funding through the infrastructure bank was to fund the project. And you will not be submitting to them operating the beach. So why would this be a concern?
Well, I think it came up in the course of our discussions just as a concern that the Beach Commission might have about whether accepting the state funds would constrain their ability to run the beach as they have been running it or wish to run it. So I think our conversation was just to acknowledge the Beach Commission's concern, which has arisen here in this discussion. But I think for the purpose of tonight's meeting and for what the council and our so-called core team, that is myself, Tony, and Bob, are doing, we have to decide on the specifics of our proposal and prepare it between now and January 15th. The council will be meeting on the 7th. You'll be meeting again on the 12th. We have felt, and we are grateful to the Beach Commission and to Don in particular for the work you've done on this and for the specific information that Don has been able to provide, and the fact that you already have a CRMC permit in hand. All these things, I would say, this is just my gut feeling, make this a strong candidate to qualify for funding for a substantial portion of the cost of this project. So to that degree, it will benefit the Beach Commission's funding of this project and the towns. I can talk about that a little more, but so basically what we're looking for tonight is some indication from the Beach Commission, which needn't be the final decision you make if you're meeting before the 15th, some indication that you are willing to participate in this grant proposal for this specific project that Don described earlier, the parking lot work, the elevation, the concrete wall, the drainage work. This all seems to be well within the criteria for this grant. So I think we have an opportunity both by continuing this conversation and for us to talk with Sean O'Rourke, the infrastructure bank coordinator for this. We can put this question to him directly so we know, is there any concern here about constraints or conditions? And we talked about this. I expect we'll be in touch with him next week to raise this issue, to clear it up. So long story is I hope that you can provide some kind of preliminary approval for this that can give us confidence to go forward in preparing the grant. I'll be working on the language with Tony and Bob. We can make sure that you see it before we submit it. And we hope to have input from the infrastructure bank before we do submit it. And this will be one of the questions we can take up.
I think probably what Carol's referring to it, because I had the same thought myself, is are we anticipating negative that they might have? I mean, what's the basis for us to even think that there's going to be an issue, that they would put in such stipulations? I see Jim wants to speak. I'll just speak for myself and let Jim pipe in. The CRMC has approved this. CRMC is one of the 5 people on the evaluation committee. They know how you run the beach. I don't particularly anticipate this to be a problem, but I see Jim has some thoughts as well.
Couple of quick answers to some of the things I think you think are problems here. Again, if you take any outside money from like either the state or federal government, you're supposed to leave your facilities open to the public. One of the things that we did last year with the being only open at night, if you look at the way the signs were worded, it says if you are a resident or a sticker holder. Stickers are available to anybody, which left that available so that we didn't run into a problem with that. And I think that would eliminate any of that sort of problem with government coming back saying that, hey, if you take our money, you have to leave this open to the public. It was open to the public at all times. If you want to go, Middletown does fairly similar thing with, and they take federal funds also. So I don't think we'll have an issue with that, especially if we word things the proper way.
And I'll add that the actual project criteria, to get back to Carol's question, the request for proposals doesn't make that statement. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that if you take your money, we tell you what to do. So that it's not a condition. It's not a specific condition of the grant proposal. We were just trying to anticipate possible concerns that might come up. So, like Jim, I don't. This is not an unusual situation in other communities, and having control over public access at some time is not the same thing as denying the public access. So I think this is something they understand. I don't anticipate it's going to be a major hurdle.
Yeah, again, I don't think we have any problem with that at all.
The can of worms and even, go down that road.
Well, again, I'm not on your committee, but I see no harm with the core team going to Sean O'Rourke and saying, someone was a little concerned, can you tell me in your past experience, have you put any stipulations on the grants? Yes or no? And, and that, it's not going overboard, but it's at least broaching the subject. I think basically tonight, I think you all want to apply for the funds.
Yes.
Then take a vote. There's no need really to pursue this much further.
But we
tonight.
really don't know if there's any stipulations or not. I mean,
You won't.
anybody can, when you take money from the state or federal government, there's always stipulations somewhere.
There is to some extent, but this is a little bit different type of grant. It's through an infrastructure bank, and
Okay,
it's meant to help the municipalities.
Okay.
So,
maybe I misread.
I wouldn't create a problem
problem?
before you've got a problem.
Right.
Okay,
And Donnie, I want to thank you because without your help, we have a shovel-ready project.
you're right.
And this is important that it is shovel-ready. You have a design put together already. It's ready to go. Otherwise, we wouldn't be eligible for this.
Right?
Okay, I think,
I'm going to make a motion that we proceed and apply for this grant.
So the town's applying for it. So I think, Joe, what the beach commission has to indicate support
Yes,
of using this project to apply for the grant.
that's correct.
Uh,
Do I
Michael,
have a second?
Michael Fogarelli, I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Joe Miato, aye.
Bill Ryan, aye.
Michael Fogarelli, aye.
Don Maderis, aye.
Motion carries.
So I have a question. When will we find out if the grant is awarded? Will we find that out before the financial town meeting?
Larry has an answer.
Yeah, this is a very fast-moving process. According to the request for proposals, we have to have our application in by January 15th. Selections are estimated to be announced on or about February 22nd.
Okay.
So yes.
And we have, and this one of the virtues of this project is that if you awarded these grants in this round, you have basically 2 years to the end of December 2022 to finish the project. The project you have is ready to go. It's going to be, as I understand it, it's going to be done next year, in six months, right? Basically. So I think that if we succeed, that money will be available, soon, and we'll know soon in February.
Larry, this is Joe Miato. I would also like to thank you for your assistance on this process in applying for this grant. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And we will keep you in touch with you as we learn things before January 15th, if anything comes up. And as I understand it, you have a meeting on the 12th, so that if there are other or final questions, we can try to iron them out at that time. Thank you.
We can just put the item on the agenda to just so that at least we can discuss it if we need to. All of that is related to the grant.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be great, Larry, if we'd like to take you up on your offer to let us take a look at the language that you write up.
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
a set of eyes.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
That'd be
Larry,
great.
Bill Ryan, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Larry.
Yep.
Thank you, Larry.
Yep.
So that's interesting. The permit says that all work must be completed on or before December 10th, 2023, which is kind of odd. But
I
in the
noticed that earlier.
context of what Larry just said, that kind of may shed light on that.
That's it.
We got one last item, number 5.
Number 5?
Yeah, so number 5 is kind of is the CRMC's response to the ongoing commission issue about the rights of the town to breach the creek. So CRMC reached out to us and asked to basically their words were they'd like to have CRMC legal meet with the town and town solicitor and discuss the ownership issues at Town Beach regarding the breaching and the Nature Conservancy. So that kind of dovetails in with the earlier thing of meeting with Tony and Dick. I postponed that, and then this came through shortly thereafter. So I was glad we did, because there's no sense doing things, piecemeal. So
You put that package together, give it to the solicitor, and then they'll all be involved.
well, what Tony suggested was that, yes, I put the package together. Myself and Tony meet with Dick Humphrey, go through it, and then obviously see what Dick has to say and let things unfold from there. But that would be before the meeting with CRMC. This would be like an internal meeting first.
Yep.
I mean, there's no hurry to meet with CRMC. Yeah, I mean, I think it was good of them that they offered to have the meeting. So we just, once we're ready for it, I think we should have it.
I think we should still keep that other item on the agenda as far as the security going forward in 2021. Even though it seems like it's not necessary for purposes of that grant, but why not just let's keep that on there? I think we're all of one mind as to how we want to proceed with that, but this way, at least if it's on the agenda,
We can discuss it and vote on it next time. Yeah, let's do that.
If you want to, I know where I stand with it.
I think we should put that on the agenda.
Okay.
Discussion.
On campers. What was the first one? Discussion on nighttime security.
Schedule of security. And
Yeah.
so forth.
Okay. I think we should put the municipal grant on as well. Just any update from Larry. I know Larry said earlier in one of the meetings, they like to submit a vote, the vote of any board that's required as part of it. So if he suggests some different language for our vote next time to shore up the application, so we should have that on the agenda, like a final vote.
Yes,
To send that in for the municipal grant.
that sounds good.
I think, I know we've got other items already that were carried over, so.
I'm just gonna say, does that cover everything that we carried over from the previous meetings for Don?
Well, I think they're still there. They're on, because you guys tabled them to the next regular
That's
meeting.
right.
This is a special meeting, so they're still there.
So that you have that sense.
And Cindy, would you send that, when you add those items tonight to that continued agenda, would you email that out to everybody? That way we have it before the meeting, just so
Yeah,
we
in case
can
anybody
kind of,
wants to add something.
or even just, give some thought to it ahead of time.
Okay. And then last on the agenda. And I'd like to have a motion here to close the meeting.
I make a motion that we close the meeting at 7:49 PM.
Do I have a second?
Michael Focarelli, I'll second that.
Can I have a vote, please?
Joe Mayotto, aye.
Bill Ryan, aye.
Michael Focarelli, aye.
Don Maderis, aye.
Have a good night.